Haha, you're here!
Okay, Christ, what do you want?
Haha, you're here!
I'm right in front of you. What is it?
Haha, you're here!
Oh God, he's stuck in some sort of infinite time loop. Maybe if I...
Haha, you're here!
Nope, okay, that's his life now. Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, welcome one and all to another fantastic event of eventful proportions. You, me, everyone who loves Monster Hunter and owns a Nintendo Switch, we've been playing the absolute heck out of the demo for Monster Hunter Rise as much as we physically can. But as can be expected from a large group of people lovingly referred to as hunters, most of us have been spending our time, well, hunting, fighting. As you should be, that's your job. However, personally, I like to put on my floppy detective hat and dive a bit deeper to find stuff that you may not have found under normal circumstances, learning things about the full game coming in 2 months from little tidbits that we've gotten in this demo. So without further ado, here are the 15 Rise changes that you may have missed. Firstly, opening up, we have one of the biggest ones. This one you might well know because we even have a video on it on this channel, but I still don't see enough people using it on hunts, and honestly, you wouldn't find it unless you went looking for it. Monsters can now get elemental blights, which is just excellent. Water blight softens their hide and makes them take more damage everywhere. Thunder blight turns all incoming damage to the monster into KO damage, making them get stunned very, very easily. Fire blight is just higher damage, shorter duration poison. And then ice blight physically slows down the animations of the monster and is very strong. Dragon we haven't seen yet, but it's safe to say that if the other 4 exist, Dragon probably will too. As for how to apply these, there is a beetle around the map for each of these 4 elements, excluding Dragon, and if you Wyvern ride one monster and attack another monster with that monster, and they have elemental attacks, you can apply the corresponding debuff to them that way. Again, one that quite a few people have found, but not enough people. Everyone needs to know about this because everyone needs to be using these in your hunts regularly. They are incredible.
Use my knowledge, I beg you.
Then coming up second, we have healing changes. This is another massive one that will definitely have been affecting you the whole time you've been hunting, but you might just have not noticed if you haven't been staring at your health bar. Potions now heal half of their amount instantly, and the other half over the duration of the animation. This feels like the most player-friendly version of potion usage that we've had, either old world or new world, this one, which either means that the game as a whole is going to be a little bit easier as a result, or that the monsters around us are going to be a bit harder to compensate. Healing is a big factor for balancing, so this change could just allow them to be more creative with monster movesets, which is always a welcome thing to see. Sliding attacks, they're gone. They are no longer any sort of sliding attacks in the game. You can jump while sliding to open up a jump attack, but slide-specific context animations are just straight up gone. You cannot do these attacks anymore. You can slide, there are places where you can slide, you just can't do slide attacks. I'm not quite sure how I feel about this one. On a surface level, slide attacks were really, really cool, but some of the cooler ones have been baked into the movesets of weapons in other ways, and when you think about it, slide attacks were probably a pretty important consideration for the map design in Monster Hunter World, which you just don't quite have the room for in Rise because of the wire bug. The terrain in this game seems to be defined by what you can do with the wire bug, so the way that I think about it is every corner that could have had a slope to do a slide attack from is instead now a place that you can do wire bug shenanigans in. It's just allowed them to be a bit more free with the map design and to focus on the wire bug aspect of it rather than worrying about sliding attacks too. Number 4 is actually bowgun specific, and it's ammo. Bowguns have 2 types of ammo that weren't in Monster Hunter World or Iceborne, however they were both in Generations Ultimate and they'll be returning here in Rise. So they'll be familiar to those of us who have played before World, but seeing as the majority of hunters who play the series now started with World, it's entirely reasonable to believe that a good portion of you won't even know that these ammo types have ever existed in the past. These being shrapnel ammo, which is essentially longer range spread shot. It fires a single shot, which then sort of splits apart once it hits the monster to do 3 more hits on the part that you target. We can't actually use this in-game in the demo with the gun that we have to test that it works exactly the same as it used to, but we do know that it is once again in the game. Then, following that, there is also the return of elemental pierce ammo here too, which is for all intents and purposes just like pierce ammo, except it's elemental damage instead of raw damage. This one is gonna have a really big impact, I can feel it, and it seems to be different from how it worked in Generations as well, as in Generations, this was an internal ammo thing, something that you couldn't craft or buy at all, and it was just something that you could use if you had the bowgun that was allowed to use it. However, now it is very clearly in our crafting list, which leads us to believe that it could function just a little bit differently than it did before. Unfortunately, just like shrapnel ammo, we cannot fire this in the demo in any way to actually test if it works, but the fact that it is here is actually a pretty big deal for potential builds in the future. Moving on then to number 5. That's right, for anyone who has been playing in the solo mode, the pause functionality has returned. This was sort of expected as it has been on every single handheld version of the series in the past, but given that it wasn't in Monster Hunter World or Iceborne, it's incredibly nice to see again. It won't affect your multiplayer hunts at all, you can't pause multiplayer, but think of the amount of times you've been hunting solo, and a moment pops up where you'd like to walk away for a moment for one reason or another. Maybe you have to use the bathroom, maybe the doorbell rings, and you just sort of can't walk away until the end of the hunt unless you want to fail the hunt. That's just not a thing anymore. I love having this option, and it may not mean much to you as an individual, but as a community, I guarantee you there's a lot of people who will be using this feature a ton over the lifespan of this game. In with the 6th new thing, continuing the theme of settings, in this game, your hunter talks, like chirpy, cheesy one-liners whenever something of note happens. This isn't the thing that you won't have noticed, as I'm almost certain that all of you will have noticed it, because it's pretty much impossible to not notice it unless you just play with sound off. But what you may have missed is that there is an actual setting. Not just to turn this function off entirely if you don't like it, but even past that, a slider to adjust the frequency at which the hunter talks, which is just the right amount of depth for this mechanic. The hunters talk quite a lot, quite frequently. You might like that your hunter talks, but not like how much they talk. Bump it down to like 50%, and bam, your game experience is now a bit different.
Reality can be whatever I want.
Again, within this theme of settings, there is a super distracting red arrow under your feet pointing towards your target at all times on a quest. Under normal circumstances, I would say that this is likely a demo-specific mechanic. However, there is a setting in the menu to turn this arrow off. So either they gave us a unique setting in our settings menu that will only affect the demo, or this targeting arrow might actually make it into the full game. In either case, if you don't like it, you can turn it off in the settings pretty easily. Then, finally in the settings menu, this one is more of a personal favorite, the gyroscope. This isn't just a single setting. In fact, it has an entire set of settings attached to it. And this is for very, very good reason. This is the setting that allows you to control your camera by moving your controller physically, whether that be your full console if you are playing handheld, or your right Joy-Con if you have the Joy-Con detached. With this setting on, you will now be able to turn your camera with your hand movement, rather than the stick itself. My first recommendation upon turning this on is to lower the sensitivity dramatically. It starts default at 50, but I would try putting it to 10 and see how you feel first. I actually got a little bit of motion sickness from trying it at 50 to start out with, just a warning. However, once I messed with it for a little bit on lower sensitivity, I was able to grasp just how awesome this is. While this setting is on, your right stick still works perfectly fine, perfectly normally, adjusting your camera. So you can now use this setting on incredibly low sensitivity in conjunction with the stick for really precise micro adjustments to your camera, reacting to the way that the monster moves on your screen. Also, once I get good at this, as someone who makes videos, I'll be able to just use this functionality to capture some absolutely breathtaking footage, so just you wait for that. Then let's take a little bit of a break in a fishing hole. Oh wait, no, break, that's item number 9 on our list. Fishing has been reworked a little bit. It seems quite similar mechanically speaking, but they completely changed how it works visually, and you now have a bit more control and a bit of a better view where you will actually cast your hook too. It may not be a massive change, but it's definitely a welcome change, especially for any of you full-time fishers out there. Bringing us up to number 10, we have quite the interesting thing found in the loading tips by you guys, our community. There is an absolutely insane number of loading tips in the game though, so it's hard to refine them for you to actually show it on the screen, but I trust you guys when you say that you've seen it, so I'll include it. That said, having not seen it with my own eyes, take it with a grain of salt until it's been confirmed. There is a loading screen tip for Deodorant, the item that cleanses the soiled status, which makes it so you can't use items while you're affected by it. What is particularly interesting about this is there are only a handful of monsters in the entire series who have ever given players the soiled status. So either this will be from a new monster that we haven't seen yet, he'll be taking up this mantle, or we will see the return of some particularly interesting monsters that are some of my personal favorites. Volvidon, who is severely underrated, Congalala, who would be a lovely personality to have around, motherfucking Seltas Queen. How cool would it be to fight Seltas Queen with wirebugs? Or Steel Uragon. Please not Steel Uragon. Number 11 is also a loading screen tip. However, this one I found myself and therefore actually have a picture of. And this is that Thunderblight has changed.
You've changed, man.
In that you can now repeatedly roll to lose Thunderblight, just like you do with Fireblight. Unfortunately, there is nothing that applies Thunderblight to hunters in the demo, so we can't do further testing to see how many rolls it takes and stuff like that, but just seeing this in general is a pretty big deal. They are really making minor adjustments to some of the particularly specific mechanics in the game, and I love that. Rounding back over to ranged ammo, but going to the other ranged weapon of choice, the bow, we have the return of exhaust coating, which essentially turns your arrows into blunt damage while active. This makes a lot of sense when you consider the barrel full of blunt spikes from Iceborne is gone, so now bow has a different avenue of blunt damage application. This is mostly meant to be used to apply exhaust to a monster by hitting the body with your arrows. However, it does also give you a comparatively small amount of KO damage if you do hit the head with this on. So you bowmains will have a bit more fun to play around with this. Number 13 is something completely different, but sort of makes sense. In Monster Hunter Rise, we have more vertical control of movement than in any Monster Hunter game up to this point. In Monster Hunter, we also have ranged weaponry. As a result, some hunters are always going to try to stand vertically out of a monster's range and shoot at it where they can't be hurt from. Monsters, however, are a bit smarter than that in this game. The AI has been coded in a way where if you try to do this, they'll just walk somewhere else. They'll go elsewhere. It's worth noting this definitely is a new thing too, because we did spend ages pelting a Barryoth with rocks from out of his range without him reacting in the slightest in Iceborne. As much as I'll miss this hilarious moment, this is probably a pretty smart mechanic to have in this game. Then number 14 is the return of a little ditty called Remobra. If you take a look in Zone 5 of the map, you will find yourself a friendly old snake wyvern face in the small monster known for poisoning the hell out of anyone within their airspace. By themselves, this may not be too massive, but they are a snake wyvern, which means maybe, just maybe, we could get another snake wyvern like a large monster, maybe Najarala, who would be wonderful to have in the game. It's also worth noting that Remobra, lore-wise, tend to hang around elder dragons. It's literally their creature description. To me, this hints that Area 5 will be an elder dragon fighting zone, but we'll have to wait until the full game to see if this theory actually pans out. Then rounding it all off with number 15, this one is just a nice little flavor thing. From the action bar, you can tell your Palico and or Palamute to wait on the spot. This itself is very different from Iceborne, where it was either leave them at a set place in the camp or bring them with you everywhere. Now you can just tell them to take a break wherever you happen to want them to. However, even past this, if you walk up to your little friends when they are in wait mode, you can interact with them, giving them pets, playing with them, and just having all manner of fun, really. Alright everyone, I've been Cotton Dinosaur, and these have been the 15 Rise changes you may have missed. Have you found anything important that I may have missed myself? Which of these changes are you most excited for in the full game? Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love, so let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, when we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters, or important news about the kingdom Animalia. Rage, Cotton, and Hollow are all here, talking about the things you want to hear. So if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and we'll cheer. Some of you are patrons, even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros. There's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.